Is this whole ranch is grazed on a rotational paddock system. So once you get in a big pasture, it's all split up like chunks of pie by cross fences, and the cross fences are just single wires. So here's what the ranch looks like. All of these are cross fences going around, so it gets lots of little small pastures. So what I do, like say if I'm doing this area, I'll come in here and pick the first one, and I'll make a loop or two around the first one. And then the way you would get from one to another, like say it's just a single cross wire, somebody has to get out, step down on the wire at a pretty wide span, and the driver slowly goes across the wire, making sure you watch that it doesn't catch on something underneath. Yeah, that's pretty high. I shouldn't have too much trouble. And just make sure you get across easily that way. And that's the way you get from paddock to paddock around within a pasture. If we break a wire, and it will happen before 10 nights are out, there's no way it won't happen. Somebody will get drowsy and run into one or something. The first thing we want to do is try to get it fixed right on the spot. If there should be enough give in them, loop it back and make a loop in one end, try to bring the other one around and loop it around. Some of these are going to be hot, so that'll be interesting, but we want to try to get it fixed. If you can't get it fixed, then you need to GPS the location and tell me so that in the morning we can go back in daylight, several of us, and try to get it fixed before we leave the property. If it happens on a wire that's separating two paddocks and there's cattle on one side, then we got to get it fixed right then. So if you can't get it fixed, call me and I'll try to come over. Maybe we'll just all converge on it and have a fence fixing party for a while. But we don't want to leave broken fences broken. And if you go through a gate that's closed, then close it behind you when you go in and close it behind you again when you come back out. Like say going in from the road or something like that. If you get really tired, it's okay to take a nap. Especially this first night. We've all been up all day long getting here. We're going to be up all night. Better to shut down for 30 or 45 minutes and kind of recharge rather than driving into a chasm, of which there are many here, or driving through a fence, which is bad too. So if you hit a wall, just stop for a while. You're going to have a chance on the data sheet to record your start time and your stop time, and don't worry about little lag. Now, if you stop for more than an hour, or if you stop for a whole bunch of times that end up to more than 2 hours, then somehow make a note of that on your sheet. But basically, if you stop for 30 minutes and get up and go again, you're probably just as effective as if you've been driving half asleep that 30 minutes anyway, so don't worry about recording that kind of stuff. If a ferret is identified or strongly suspected that it's a ferret, you want to get as close to it as you can. That means, driving more or less a straight line, being aware of yucca and chasms and cross wires. You want to get over to where you can actually see which hole the ferret goes down into and walk right up and look down. And 4 times out of 5, you walk up to a hole the ferret's gone in, shine your light down there, and you're going to see him looking back at you. He'll be 2 or 3 feet down, probably. If it's a female, maybe not, but they're a little more skittish, but basically they're pretty curious. And I'd say 3 out of 5 anyway. You walk up to them and you're going to be able to see them just a couple feet down below. In fact, we've had some of them where had to have somebody put their foot over the burrow while they go get the equipment and stuff to keep them from coming out, if that's not the burrow they want to be in. We're going to deploy these ring readers, which I'll show you here in a minute. Basically, we're not doing any capturing now, but we're trying to identify as many individual ferrets as we can. And a bunch of them are microchipped with a little microchip implanted kind of on the back of the neck between the shoulder blades. So we deploy these ring readers and get them all set up. Ferret pokes his head up through that, and if he's marked, it'll record his individual number on the reader. And we can tell which ferret it is, and we're going to keep track of that kind of stuff. Be extremely careful with the wiring on these ring readers, and on the spotlights too, but especially on the ring readers. They're made for field work, but the wiring is pretty much the diameter of human hair, so it comes off really easily and breaks real easily. And Pat and I spent 45 minutes, hour, working with them this afternoon to get some of them ready. You're going to put a reflector down at the burrow where you leave a ring reader. That just helps you find it. You're going to take a GPS reading of that same location so you can find it again. And then you're just going to drive off and leave it. And you can come back and check it however often you want. I certainly wouldn't check it any sooner than an hour unless you know that ferret was bumping up against your shoe trying to get out of there. Then maybe just back off a little bit and watch and see if he comes out. But just go back and check it periodically. You don't want to leave it all night, because then if he comes out and he's not marked, you don't know, you're not sure if he's coming. The other thing you want to do is when you put the ring around the plug, the hole, and we're in the middle of a drought, so it's kind of hard to find, but try to get a handful of grass of some kind and make like a grass plug in the burrow. Nothing that will impede the ferret's progress coming out, but something you can tell if he came out. You can tell if it's like, okay, now it's pushed aside a little bit. That animal clearly came out of that. The ring reader didn't pick up anything, then you mark him as an unidentified animal, unmarked animal. Yeah, try to make sure the ferret has exited the hole before you pick up the reader. Most ferrets this time of year are going to be solitary. They're not going to be hanging out together at all. So you go back to your hole, to your ring reader, and 20 yards over there you see a ferret running around. 90% chance that's the one that was in your hole. But check and see, you know, if the grass plug clearly was not disturbed, and maybe it's the way, you know, if you pack it in there too tight and it's, you know, he comes out and it snaps back in place behind him or something. You know, trying to make it so it's going to be obvious when he comes out. If you're positive that that ferret's still down there, then chase this one around and put a ring on it too. But they shouldn't be that close together this time of year unless, you know, maybe a female came into estrus really early, and as soon as they do that, the males all smell them and they know where they're at and they start congregating on them. But it's a little early for that yet. You're all going to have a radio if anything comes up that you need to get on the radio and talk. I've got a base unit in my truck, or a mobile unit in my truck. I'll be able to hear you. Unfortunately, the Haverfields in there will also be able to hear you all night long, so try to think about what you're saying on the radio when you get on there. If it's work related, do it on the radio. If you just want to call somebody and chat, do it on a cell phone. And when we get near daybreak, we'll start talking about, okay, has anybody got any more rings out? Is it time to pick them up? That kind of thing. We'll basically go till dawn, but we'll sort of play it by ear too. I mean, again, first night, everybody could get wiped out pretty early, so we'll just see how it goes. What am I forgetting, ladies? This is what a data sheet looks like. And you're all going to have 2 or 3 of them. You shouldn't need more than one a night. But you're going to put the date up here, and the date is always the date we start. So from now until tomorrow morning, dawn, this is March 18th, 2013. I'd like the names of everybody who's in your group, just so I have some idea. Even if you just put last names, fine. The area surveyed, that'll be referenced on the map, whatever you get area assigned to, put that on there. And the survey times, when you started and then when you stopped, and then like I say, if there's really significant breaks in time there, you know, you broke down for a flat tire and it took 2.5 hours to get it fixed or get out of there, whatever, then we'll put that down. All right, each line, each row, not each column, each row on the chart here is for one ferret. So the first ferret you observe, and you know for sure it was a ferret, he gets this first row here, and you put down the time it was observed, or the time you deployed a ring reader if you do so. The reflector number if you put a reflector out. And some of these have numbers and some don't, but that basically just kind of, if you got some close together, it helps you sort out which is which. The UTM easting and northing from the GPS units, and if anybody's got a question about that, make sure you get that resolved before you drive out of the yard here this evening. The transponder number, that's a 9-digit number. If you get a reading on a chip, then write that in there. And if you do so, well, something that would speed up my data processing afterwards is go to this 4 or 5 pages at the very end that has the chip numbers of every ferret that's either been released with a chip or caught and chipped out here on the site. Now, ferrets don't live very long, so I wouldn't start with the 2007 animals. You want to start with the most recent ones. Go to the back, and they're segregated. The first part of this table is marked TNC for the Nature Conservancy. And the last part of the table is marked HBB, that's for the Haverfield Barnhart Blank Complex. That's where we are tonight. So go to the last part and kind of work your way back and see if you can find the number. And then use this ferret ID number in the left-hand column and put that right there. You're not going to be putting out traps, you're not going to be putting out plugs, ferret, you know, don't worry about that, because we use these same data sheets when we're trapping in the fall. Whether you caught the ferret, I mean, if you put down a transponder number, I know you caught the ferret. If he definitely came through and you're sure it came through and no number got read, then put that in here. Put it was an unmarked or unchipped animal, so we know for sure. And then I'll kind of, when I'm doing the geospatial stuff later, I'll say, well, we had a unchipped one here and a chip, you know, kind of sort out how many we had. It's not perfect. I mean, the only perfect one we know is all the ones that are marked, but we can kind of add those on to it if they're, you know, if they're far enough apart that they clearly were different animals. Any question about any of that? Oh, this column here has numbers in it, or letters. ferret A, whatever he is, you turn over this to the back side where your map is, and let's say you're down here on the Barnhart pasture. Your GPS units have the basic outline of this on your GPS, so you'll get a fair idea, pretty approximate idea where you are. You know, it doesn't have to be exact, but as close as you can figure out from your GPS little screen. Put that letter A on here, and the same thing with B. Put every ferret that you see that you're sure was a ferret, or pretty sure was a ferret. Put it, you know, if it gets a line of data, it should have a letter on the back on the map. I didn't make that clear enough last time, and didn't get all that information I wanted. Any questions so far? Aren't you done taking that picture yet?
This is a video.
Oh. You haven't said cheese.